Hi guys and gals, and welcome to Magic. In this YouTube video, I'm going to be showing you how to send an email using Hasura. Now, if you don't know Hasura from before, you can find them at hasura.io, and it's basically a GraphQL service provider allowing you to expose your database using a GraphQL API. So they basically give you one endpoint where you can connect that endpoint to your database, and you have GraphQL capabilities on your database, typically from your front end. Now, a huge problem about Hasura is that it's literally impossible to apply business logic. Let's say you have a registration HTTP endpoint where you actually need to send an email to do double opt-ins on registrations or something like that. Well, at this point, actually, aista.com comes to your rescue. There's a link in the description of this YouTube video, because aista.com allows you to create HTTP API gateways. What is a gateway, you may ask? Well, a gateway is a thing that intercepts another HTTP request. So imagine you have like an HTTP endpoint that you cannot modify for some reasons. Then you can create a gateway that actually invokes your original HTTP endpoint, but that you are consuming from your client code, such that you can actually apply your business logic in the gateway HTTP endpoint. So first things first, if you want to send an email using Hasura, you got to open up management, you got to click configuration, and you have to modify your SMTP sendings here. You need a host, that's typically smtp.gmail.com or something, I don't even know. You need to figure out these parts from yourself. If you register at SendGrid or something like that, they give you a host, they give you a username and a password, and then you need to apply the default from name, for instance, Aista Ltd, and the default info at aista.com email address like this. And then you need to save your configuration, and then you can go to Tools, Hyper-ID, you can expand modules, click on modules here, click the 3 action buttons here, click active folder, choose new folder, name your folder Hasura, click Hasura, click the 3 action buttons again, active folder, new file, and then write send-email.post.hl. And you now have a hyperlambda file. A hyperlambda file can be used for a lot of interesting things, among other things, sending emails. So let's now create the code required to turn this hyperlambda file into an HTTP API gateway. First, we need an arguments collection. Write dot arguments colon asterisk. This basically means accept anything. I can handle whatever. Then you want to extract the JWT bearer token that you're typically passing on to Hasura. Okay, just write headers dot, click control space, at which point you're given autocomplete, at which point you can retrieve an HTTP header that was passed into this particular endpoint. Colon authorization. Now, after executing this hyperlambda line of code, our JWT bearer token, the entirety of the authorization header, is going to be the value of this thing. You can actually look at it, copy and paste it, and open it up in MISC evaluator, and I click Control V. Of course, this is just a demo cloudlet for the records. I don't really care that much about exposing my JWT token. And here you can see I have a complete bearer token towards my cloudlets. Then I need to construct a send-email lambda object. Write dot send-email. Click carriage return, click tab, click Alt V on Windows or Options V on a Mac. And then write into the filter text box SMTP. And we're now sending emails. Now we want to remove the from parts. Why? Because we already configured it in our configuration parts here. As you remember, if I open this one in another window, you see the from as a default from for my particular server. However, we want to keep the two. We probably, though, want to manually change the two, right, according to whatever arguments we are given. Let's imagine we're given a JSON payload such as this. Name, Thomas Hansen, email, foo@bar.com, right? And then we want to send the email to this particular name and email address. Okay, now so let's modify our Lambda object here by writing set dash value colon x colon at dot send dash email, same as the name of our Lambda object, slash asterisk asterisk slash, and now we want to change this guy to foo. Foo, we're now setting the value, get value colon x colon at dot arguments slash asterisk slash email. And now we want to set its name. Name. So we now have a dynamically created mail.smtps.send.invocation that actually sends an email, and we can modify the body as we see fit. Hello world from Hyper Lambda HTTP API Gateway. We're now sending this particular content to the user. Alt S saves your file. Now all we got to do is to invoke Hasura. So we have the authorization JWT token that we retrieved up here. Okay, now all we got to do is write http.post colon 2 double quotes https TPS colon slash slash my-app.hasura.io slash GraphQL endpoint, or whatever your URL at GraphQL is. It doesn't really matter. I don't even know how their HTTP endpoints are constructed. Now we want to pass in a headers argument to this HTTP post invocation. We want to create an authorization HTTP header pointing to the value of this guy. So we now have our JWT bearer token to our HTTP post invocation. Now all we got to do is to add the arguments that we were given as input to this gateway. Get dash nodes colon x colon app dot argument slash asterisk. And then probably we want to return the value of that above invocation. And actually we're not passing it in correctly. Payloads, arguments, and then we need a payload here. Then we need a convert colon true, and then we need to add colon x colon plus get dash nodes colon x colon at http.post slash asterisk slash content. And we now have an HTTP gateway. Now, of course, I can't invoke this because I actually don't have a Hasura, GraphQL endpoint. However, if you want to try this out yourself, you can find a link in the description of this YouTube video to an article to where I'm going to be publishing its code. Here is the code for reference purposes, and let's walk through it. So here, first of all, I guess we can move. It's okay, we can keep it here. First, we are declaring an arguments collection, accepting anything. So we can take any JSON payload, which basically implies any GraphQL payload, right? Then it's retrieving the authorization header. Then it's creating a Lambda object. And actually, we're never invoking the Lambda object. So I guess now we need to make a decision if we are going to send the email before invoking GraphQL endpoint, at which point we'll do something like this, eval colon x colon at dot send dash email, or if we want to invoke the sending of the email after we have invoked the GraphQL endpoint. Now we're invoking the send. Now we're sending the email after we are invoking the GraphQL endpoint, because we're below http.post here. If you put it at the top, you're sending an email before you are invoking the GraphQL HTTP endpoint. Exactly how you want to do this is up to you to decide. And at this point, of course, we can do a lot of like really interesting stuff, such as dot email, we can apply email validator at dot argument slash asterisk slash email to ensure that the email argument passed into the endpoint actually is a valid email, at which point, if it's not, this thing will throw an exception, and we can apply whatever business logic we want to, both before we're invoking GraphQL and after. So now let me walk you through it. Getting the authorization header, we're creating a Lambda object where we are dynamically changing the to email address and the name. Set value here of the dot send email asterisk asterisk slash foo here to the value of the email, changes the email address we're sending the email to. Set name, changes the name of the person whom we are sending the email to. Of course, you can manipulate the subject to the same way. Then we are adding into the payload node here all the arguments we are given to this endpoint. And then we're invoking our GraphQL endpoint here, passing in the authorization buried token as we're given in our original API gateway. Then we are sending the email, and then we are returning the result of our HTTP post invocation to the client. Now, what we've basically done requires you to change the URL of your endpoint in your client, if that is Swift, iOS SDK, or Angular, or React, or Android SDK, or whatever, it doesn't matter. But you can just change the base URL. Instead of invoking Hasura directly, passing in your GraphQL payload, you're invoking the Hyperlambda endpoint at ista.com on your cloudlets, with the one difference being, of course, that you now can easily send an email from your GraphQL endpoint if you wish. So anyways, there's a link in the description of this YouTube video to an article where you can look at my code, and also to ista.com, where you can register to create your own Hyperlambda cloudlet if you need to apply the ability to send an email on your GraphQL endpoints. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.